Hello everyone and welcome to yet another episode of Crab Digging Investigations. This week we're going to do something a bit differently. I've had this worked out for a while now, and since I avoided monitors last week I couldn't complete and record a whole new game now. So this is perfect. We're going to take a look at the history of the CDI system. So let me take you back down the threads of time where I tell you the tale of how the CDI came to be. I guess the real story behind the CDI started all the way back in the early 80s, when the compact disc was still a very new medium indeed. Philips was the company that brought the first CD ever to the Japanese market on August 17, 1982. This was the album The Visitors by ABBA. 2 months later, Sony introduced the first ever CD player in Japan. That same year they were released in Europe, and early 1983 the US was also provided with CD players. Philips and Sony had successfully worked together to bring us this new musical wonder. Soon after the successful introduction of the CD, Philips and Sony started to think of new ways to use these discs. I guess that's how companies that invent for you work. Invent something nice, then invent something nicer to replace it all the crap with so that we can buy it all over again. Over the years, many new disc formats were made, like the CD-ROM, photo CD or video CD. There are many more, and quite a few actually failed. One of which is the now infamous CDI format. The two electrical giants went different ways at first, but in 1985 Philips and Sony decided to join forces once again to bring a new multimedia standard that could hold audio, images and text. Another little big Japanese giant joined the team to break this new standard. This was Matsushita, which is mostly known under the Panasonic brand name. In 1986 the compact disc interactive standard was written down in the Green Book. Every new CD format is written down, and the document's covers get a new color for every new format. These colored books outline how the CD should be built up and how players should read them. There are many of these rainbow books, like the red book describes the audio CD standard and the yellow book the CD-ROM format. In 1987 the first prototypes were demonstrated, and in 1988 the first units were sent to developers who would start to make software for the system. Around 1990 Philips started to distribute more machines to smaller companies so they could enter the market too. Sony had dropped out of the CDI project around this time. They eventually went on to better things, like the PlayStation for example, which would be a huge success. I don't really have to explain that, do I? The CDI was introduced to the masses in 1991. Philips wanted a multimedia player to play edutainment, so there were very few games for a while and only boring learning tools. And people didn't buy that, well, at least not for $700 or so. There were some games, but they were merely an afterthought and mostly interactive versions of board games or TV shows. Philips wanted to bring us the newest hot thing in home entertainment, something to replace a computer with that could run on a TV. Originally Philips never even intended to enter the games market and compete there. This was a multimedia system, not a games console. However, after a while only the games sold, even though they were craptastic. So Philips had to change the strategy, and so they did. In 1994, they needed more than 2 years to finally realize they were on the wrong track, and that lost time would cost them dearly. They now started focusing on games and made a new model which looked more like a games console and was a lot cheaper too. It came packed in with the game Burn Cycle, which is one of the better games for the system. They now advertise the CDI more as a games console. However, it was already too late. Sure, they made a nice deal out of it, but not many people were willing to invest in a machine with such a boring image and bad reputation. While on the other hand, the Sega Saturn and the Sony PlayStation were just around the corner. Those looked way more promising, and the CDI was soon forgotten for the most part. The 32-bit era had started.